Welcome to another episode of Chief Influencer. I'm your host, Anthony Shop, co-founder of Social Driver. Washington is the center of influence in the US and arguably the world. Chief Influencer spotlights leaders who have figured out how to break through in today's fragmented and noisy environment. Social Driver teamed up with the George Washington University College of Professional Studies and Communications Board to recognize these leaders as chief influencers and highlight how they inspire and influence others. Welcome to another episode of Chief Influencer. I'm your host, Anthony Shop, and today we're bringing you a special compilation episode focused on a critical topic in our increasingly digital world, cybersecurity. We will delve into lessons and experiences shared by leaders and experts who are navigating the complex landscape of technology, information, and security. Discussions will revolve around the impact of AI on our relationships in society, the challenges of misinformation, and the importance of education in combating it, the call to mobilize everyone in the effort to enhance cybersecurity, and the ethical responsibilities that come with developing and using powerful new technologies. You'll hear insights on feeling empowered in the face of technological change, understanding the nuances beyond simple misinformation, and the crucial role education plays from K-12 to workforce development. So let's dive in. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what do you think the American people need to know about AI and technology trends? Because certainly just the digital revolution that we've all lived through has really made a huge impact in the way we communicate with one another, whether it's friends, family, companies, the government, right? I mean, when we were very young, at least speaking for myself, there weren't websites and apps and video chats and calls. And so these things have made a really big difference in just terms of how we live our lives. And I'm wondering, how is AI going to impact just the relationships we have with one another? So as you think about just the public, what do you think the public should know?
Yeah, we are in a similar revolution, right? AI will change the way we relate and connect. And I want people to feel empowered. I think often, to your point, technology and even worse, cybersecurity makes people feel overwhelmed and kind of self-select out. And they feel like they have no agency and control over how things evolve. But quite frankly, people have a lot of agency and control. Companies need to be responsive to the needs of their users. So be vocal about what you want to see from the technology providers that bring you new things, whether that's the latest version of a chatbot or how search evolves. There is an opportunity for them to be responsive to your needs. AI is not going to go anywhere. I mean, the use of it will change, and so the manifestations will change, but I encourage people to try to get up to speed, play around with some of the Chat GPT, Geminis, Claudes of the world, and see how it can make your life a little bit easier. But please remember that it is a tool, not a solution, right? It can generate ideas for you to then workshop, but it should not be the way you do your homework or the way you answer even an email. It can generate the first draft, but you've got to do some work. So I would say to people, one, feel empowered, get involved, be vocal about what your needs are and the problems that you hope that this technology solves for you. Two, get on board and get trained up, because you will likely start to you're already probably using AI at work, but you will probably start to see generative AI in some of the more commercial manifestations that you're starting to see in public come across your desk and be a part of your day-to-day responsibilities. And even if not, you'll see it in your more social settings. And use that as an opportunity to advance yourself professionally.
So you've mentioned to me before that you kind of see yourself as the Paul Revere of cybersecurity. And I'd love to being at George Washington University, I'm particularly interested in anything Paul Revere has to say. So tell us a little bit more about that.
My deal is that we need to mobilize the whole country. We need to, as individuals, we need to do a better job of protecting ourselves, our families, our homes. We need to do what we can also to protect our jobs and to protect American infrastructure. And in doing all that, we help protect the entire country. Mass mobilization like that means that someone has to get the word out, and So far, I seem to be playing the role of Paul Revere. That's a maybe, because I don't know if I really want to put on a powdered wig or ride a horse. Horses are, kind of big and smelly, and they don't like me. The role I do have is the same as Robert Morris. He was the one who basically financed the War of Independence, the revolution. Ironically, not the Robert Morris who created the first internet worm. The missing role, we need someone with serious top-down leadership skills to play the role of George Washington. And I have no idea who that's going to be, but it's not me. And that requires serious social skills. And like, have you met me?
Well, I don't know about that, but I do think that you are the kind of person that people look to for the next most important thing we need to focus in on as an entrepreneur, as an innovator, and as an influencer. So I want to kind of dig into that, because I think whether it's Craigslist, whether it's the current work that you're doing, you've had multiple different kinds of stakeholders to reach out to with your message and to get people to kind of think about things in a different way. So what are some of your strategies or tactics for influencing stakeholders that get them to pay attention?
I really am a nerd, seriously, with the obvious dysfunctions relating to social skills. All I know is being very passionate about all the time promoting stuff which really helps the country. And, basically think about what your moral compass is. My moral compass was set by Mr. and Mrs. Levin in Sunday school way back in the late 50s, early 60s. They taught me to treat people like I want to be treated. That means provide good customer service. They taught me to know when enough is enough, which is why Craigslist is monetized minimally. And now and then your brother's keeper or your sister's keeper. Those are a lot of the things I think about influence in business and maybe beyond. For example, if you're treating people like you want to be treated, you do the best customer service you can. Sometimes that's really difficult when your site is mostly free, but you just plug away and do what you can. There's other advice I only learned in 2010 at the West Wing. Valerie Jarrett saw that we were getting hit by a really nasty dirty tricks operation, one which proved to be successful. And she told me that no good deed goes unpunished. And she helped me understand that someone who's basically honest, particularly a technology person who's very honest, will never be able to successfully deal with or confront someone who lies for a living. So those are some of the big lessons I've learned. They're fairly sparse, but the idea is that anyone doing good work needs to be prepared to be hit by very bad people because they have no conscience regarding dirty tricks campaigns, and those can do an enormous amount of damage.
One of the things you said was you mentioned the credibility of information. And obviously right now we have this rising challenge of misinformation and disinformation, and how that affects, companies, but also elections. It occurs to me that this topic must really hit home with you because you headed the Swiss delegation to the Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. And, that's a topic that there is a lot of misinformation about. How do you think governments can overcome lies being spread on social media in this time? Because it travels so quickly and it can proliferate so much.
That's the topic of a meeting we had 2 weeks ago with the founder of Politico and a group of top American journalists at my residence, and the topic was, how do we deal with it? And the clear answer is we don't have the answer yet, because we will always be torn between what I would call the French solution, which is regulating, but how do you regulate the access to information, or leaving it totally free, like Elon Musk said 2 weeks ago, and he said, finally, we've reached a point where everyone will have access to unfettered information, unfiltered information. This is a big victory for democracy. I don't believe it is. I believe that what is happening right now in the social media is a commotion, a revolution that is comparable to what happened in the 15th century with the advent of the printing press. There was a sudden massive increase in the speed of the circulation of information, and it took 2 centuries for the powers that be to understand how to deal with it. Only the advent of the printing press was a picnic compared to what's happening now with the social media. I personally, I am coming to the conclusion, though it's not yet a conclusion, that we can only do it through education. Educating the new generation to understand what it means, or what a raw information, what an information means, and educate them to always try and put it into context. Remember, the generation that's now 20, 25, how the young, especially the young girls, were susceptible to fall for predators on the internet because it was new, and how the new generation, the younger ones, have now been educated to understand, hey, be careful, the great looking 16 years old that's trying to hit on you on the internet might be a 60 years old predator, and now they know how to do it. We need to re-educate the whole generation to assess information, and not to take for granted every. And I mean, the assassination attempt against the candidate Donald Trump the other day was such a good example. It didn't take more than 10 minutes for the first fake news to start to circulate, from the fake picture of Secret Service agents laughing whilst evacuating the president, and thus you see they were laughing, and they were happy about it was a conspiracy, and it was a fake picture, to all the analysis by experts, and it turns out many of these experts never existed. We have to educate the young generation to wait, not to take every immediate information as God's word, because I personally don't believe in how do you regulate free speech?
Right.
How do you regulate free speech? How do you do this? Or do you put a sign, this information has been checked by trained journalists? Probably we'll have to do that too. We'll have to do it. But you will hear, as soon as we start doing this, it will mean, aha, this is the information that has been controlled by them.
There's a lot of conversation, a lot of reporting that talk about, quote, misinformation and, quote, disinformation. I know you've said this might be a misdiagnosis of the problem. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I never liked the term misinformation very much. It was handy, when you're talking about vaccines causing autism, for example. That is misinformation. At this point, there is so much scientific body of knowledge to refute that claim, to say, no, this is false, this is not true. But as we were looking at that broader concept of what went viral on the internet, what was trending, what people were sitting up and paying attention to, it wasn't stuff that was demonstrably false. It was stuff where you didn't actually know what the truth was yet, right? Things where you actually couldn't know in that moment if it was true or not. And so what was happening in a lot of these trends, what was happening in a lot of these kind of online communities, was not so much a problem of facts and everybody just has some bad facts, and if we just gave them the right facts, they would say, oh, sure, got it, okay, whoops, we were wrong. No, that's not what's happening at all. What's happening is you have unverified information. You have people sharing that unverified information, passing it from person to person. It's very, very old behavior. We used to, we've been doing this since humans organized into societies. You would, share information through your village, word of mouth. But what was happening when it happens online, a lot of the time it's happening because it's perceived as a almost like in a factional way, right? We in this highly homogenous community are going to make up our mind about this thing. We're going to get very, very mad about it. It's going to trend. Again, it's usually something where you actually can't know the facts in that moment. Other people from another political faction might come in and fight with us about it. That actually only sort of furthers the trend and increases the attention to it. But ultimately, the facts aren't going to be found out for, maybe hours, maybe days, maybe weeks in some cases after the fact. And so you have the public opinion formation is happening in that moment. People are kind of deciding on reality in that space, in that conversation. And again, going back to if you make it trend, you make it true. The actual facts, like the sort of outcome, the truth of the rumor, if you will, is not necessarily going to trend. So we saw this over and over and over again in 2020 with claims about voting. There would be a story of ballot mules tossing something into a box, right? And if you believed that there was a epidemic of illegal voting, these things would go viral, right? And it would take days sometimes for somebody to come out and say, this is a real person, this is, they're carrying their family's ballots. This is not some sort of vast illegal vote operation. But again, you would see the sort of repetition of these stories where the allegations of fraud would go viral, the rumor would go viral, and then the facts actually never even really connected because it takes time to find out the truth. So I felt like misinformation was just was a misdiagnosis of what was actually happening in those moments, in those times. And we started moving to talking about it much more in the context of rumors and then propaganda. Because again, a lot of the time the rumors would be picked up by people who had a political agenda and who could use the rumors to further that political agenda. And so it was very much this this very human process that's happening, people trying to make sense of the world, but it also became very potent for people with a real agenda to go and pick up those allegations, pick up those claims, pick up those rumors, and then blast them out with a very sort of political angle to them. So I felt like that was how we should be talking about this.
This episode is brought to you by the George Washington University's College of Professional Studies. With in-person and online programs ranging from master's degrees in public relations strategy to certificate programs in digital communications, GW offers more than just the credentials to help working professionals get ahead. It prepares them to be leaders in their field. I'm a proud GW graduate myself, and I can attest that the faculty members combine academic rigor with real-world lessons that can't always be found in textbooks. Check out cps.gwu.edu for more information. When I look at some of the marketing and advertising from the tech companies that are integrating AI into their solutions, I wonder if the message that they're getting across to consumers is that message of, this is going to just be a tool to help you, or if some of that, if they're actually showing examples that might sort of be counter to their, the core values that they want to communicate about, this doing something for you. An example that was in the media recently was about an ad around a young person writing a letter and using AI to just kind of do it for the person rather than kind of showing people who use AI a lot say, actually, this would have been really great to proof the letter or generate ideas for the letter. But in the commercial, quick TV spot, it kind of was just like, have it do it for you. And I'm wondering if some of their external messaging might actually conflict with their values and what they sort of say in deeper conversations that they hope this technology will make possible.
Yes, that there is a real opportunity to prioritize education in the midst of promoting a tool or a capability. And often there is a disconnect between how those conversations are happening in the organization and how they come out in a short commercial or marketing installation. But they have a duty, in my personal opinion, to steward how people use the capability. Not the only duty. Governments, educators, parents, community leaders all have an opportunity, and I think to varying degrees to different people, an obligation to help cultivate and direct how AI integrates into the toolkits that we all have as individuals. But I do think companies have a responsibility in that regard as well. I mean, just like when the internet and Wikipedia popped up, and there were a bunch of teachers who were like, don't use Wikipedia. It is not an authoritative source, and got really upset about it. That was a moment in time that maybe that was, correct, but the evolution of that instruction became use it as a lead generator and then use that to point towards authoritative sources and fact check this, right? Like, because you understood that someone was going to use it. And so just like the education ecosystem will have to evolve in terms of how you use some of these chat functionality, so does the companies that are putting this technology out there. Because Wikipedia tells you that. Wikipedia tells you it is a crowdsourced tool that you can use to kind of get a quick understanding of their capability. And I mean, they're a little bit different because Wikimedia is a nonprofit, but that kind of clear narrative about what the capability is and what the capability isn't, I think is increasingly a responsibility that companies need to take on.
Well, I can remember that narrative, Wikipedia, don't use that. And then I can remember the counter narrative. Actually, this study showed that Wikipedia articles are often more accurate than encyclopedia articles. And certainly they have the opportunity to be updated in real time.
More up to date.
Be more up to date. But of course, neither is a silver bullet for knowledge, right?
Right.
So I think, that's a really good analogy.
Takes me to one of my soapbox issues, and I won't say anything too long, but this is why we really need a focus on critical thinking and understanding how to get authoritative information and do the research in schools, and just so people feel equipped to know, when do you stop past Wikipedia? What places can I seek information? And that will include tools like AI.
There's such a vast territory that you're covering in your Paul Revere. You're riding through K through 12. You're riding through workforce development circles, riding through government, riding through private industry, and all sorts of different areas. So I want to kind of take that apart in some pieces, because I think the actors that you're working with and even the messaging and the activities that you're doing are very different. Can we drill down just a little bit more on the K through 12 piece of this? How well do you think we are doing as a nation in communicating and raising awareness among our youth about the cybersecurity field and the need?
We are starting to break through, but a lot more work needs to be done. Girls Who Code is now teaching cybersecurity to a lot of kids, but that's still a small fraction of everyone. There's other groups doing that as well, but so far it's a drop in the bucket. I really do need to work with that group more to try to spread their message through all schools in the U.S. This also includes good efforts which can help the entire effort. For example, Girl Scouts now have cybersecurity merit badges at different levels of that. My neighbor, who's I think 7 and a Girl Scout, her mom and her are very proud that she's gotten the first 3 cybersecurity merit badges.
Oh, that is fantastic. That is fantastic. So then let's pivot there to, what about colleges and universities and doing degree programs in cybersecurity? What are we doing well, and what do you think we need to be doing better?
One problem, which the workforce development people are working on, is finding out what are the good programs, the effective programs across the country to actually do that kind of training. We need to know who they are. Maybe we need to suggest that they do cyber clinics, so that acts as, well, it's training for students, advising in real problems, and that way it helps solves or prevents problems on the part of nonprofits and also utilities and also local governments, because our country is full of targets. A lot of them are very soft targets, and this is a way people doing workforce development can pitch in. I do some special efforts. Like I mentioned, Vets in Tech trains vets and their spouses for jobs in cybersecurity. But also there's the DoD SkillBridge program, which takes active service members and trains them to keep fighting even after they transition out of the armed forces.
Well, I think you're absolutely right on education. And I'll tell you an example. Obviously, AI is a new factor when it comes to this because you can, quickly generate something that is convincing and that looks real. And so one of the things that's happened over the last year, I had a chance to talk to the person who led the AI task force at the White House recently. And they've been working with private companies to add watermarks so that it would say, this photo has been altered or created by AI. Well, the problem I think with that is that, we use lots of AI features to, what if I'm removing somebody's name badge, or what if I'm just, cleaning up the lighting? Is it also going to say that AI feature that I used? And then will everything have AI on it? And the example that we discussed was, if I go to the state of California, they have a specific law that they have to disclose if there are potential carcinogens in food. Well, you go into any Starbucks and it says this coffee might have potential. You go to any restaurant, it has the signs everywhere. So because
Of
it's
course,
everywhere, it sort of means nothing, right? Because everybody sees it on
exactly.
everything. And if everything just has a thing that says AI was used to alter this photo, it's not going to really help solve the root of the problem. And so I
And this
think,
is it's a fundamental question because it's the question of officially sanctioned information.
yeah,
And it used to be different. It used to be we would have left-wing journalists, right-wing journalists, centrist journalists, but they were journalists. They were
right.
trained to do that job. They were trained and they had a journalistic ethics to look at an information and try at least to do, even if they had a political opinion, but at least to try and understand, is this credible and what's the source and whatever. The moment you say there would be some bureaucrat deciding that this one has been certified as a serious information and this one hasn't, is very dangerous. It's very dangerous. We are creating a world of officially sanctioned information.
Yeah.
Very dangerous. So probably it's a matter, and we need at some point to recreate the job of the journalist. So because the business model is dying, the business model of traditional journalism is gone. One has to face it because there is no money going into traditional journalism anymore. So, except of course for the elites, and so the few newspapers, the few television channels that will survive the onslaught, because that's what or the bloodbath that's happening in the media. But we have to recreate for the social media something like the job of a journalist with the same ethics and the same approach to information. How do we do it? I wish I would know, because I would be a billionaire very soon. I would create the next, I remember when CNN came back in during the first Gulf War as the first 24 hours information channel, and how suddenly it was the model and everyone tried to emulate it. And now it seems so old-fashioned.
Right.
So old-fashioned. We need a new revolution in the media and a revolution in the social media, but it has to be based on the ethics and the methods of journalism.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
this country created modern journalism.
yeah.
The US created modern journalism. This country created the best journalism schools in the world, together with the Brits, to be fair. And now, how do you adapt this model and make it viable? Because it has to be commercially viable. If it's not commercially viable, it's not going to happen.
Can you tell us, what gives you hope after having dug into so much of the things that aren't working and the problems that we have and are going to continue to have?
There's a whole lot of people paying attention to these issues now. 10 years ago, or even in 2018, when we were having the freedom of speech, freedom of reach conversation, it was a very small group of people who were really trying to dig into what shifts made sense, right? How do you design better social media? What does better even mean? And now I think I'm really encouraged by the recognition that, platforms understand the role that they play. They are willing to experiment in some ways. You're seeing the rise of new platforms like Blue Sky, and Threads is like an outgrowth of Instagram, but Threads is integrating with the Fediverse, with Mastodon and the decentralized internet, sort of server-based, much more community-focused internet. So I think that there's a lot of technological shifts that are happening that are very interesting and that give us an opportunity to put more power and agency in the hands of users. That also enable social media and smaller social media to think about bridging divides using things like bridging algorithms that curate important divisive issues, but do it in a way that surfaces voices that are not actively out there seeking to cause fights, right? You can talk about abortion in very different ways, and meaning you can either be out there sort of demonizing your opponents and calling for people to go, show up at clinics and target doctors and, all sorts of different ways in which that conversation has happened in the past. Or you can surface the conversation and try to get at the debate by highlighting the issues, not in the most toxic voices possible that often attract currently the most attention. So rethinking what is happening there. I think there's a lot of potential and a lot of recognition that that these are the areas that we need to be exploring.
Well, Renee, your new book, Invisible Rulers, The People Who Turn Lies into Reality. It is an incredible read, incredible listen for those of you who prefer that. Very sobering, but with some hope at the end. Do not skip the last chapter is my advice, because there's a lot of great stuff there that is a little bit.
I'm glad to hear you say that. It's funny because I remember talking to my publisher and I was like, I don't know how to, everybody wants, my friend called it the chapter 9 problem, right? Like nobody actually wants to read the solutions, or they're out of date by the time the book comes out. So I'm glad that you actually found it interesting and useful.
No, I did. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the whole thing. And, I think it's a really important thing. And look, from just the conversation today, if folks don't even read the book, I think just hearing, if you are a chief influencer, if you are a leader who's trying to get your message out and break through the noise, making sure that you build that network, because it's not just about pushing content out. When you do create content, it has to be a fit for the channels. It has to be authentic. There's a way that you can work with your network and influencers to do that fast. The rapid response examples that you gave. I mean, I just think that there's really some things that we can take away no matter who we are or what we're doing. And this sort of decentralization phenomenon that's going on can be difficult and challenging, but it also can create some really interesting opportunities. So
it does. And I think the only thing I would add to that is just for influencers in particular, it's the ethics piece, right? It's recognizing the power that you have and using it responsibly. And that's the thing that I think, I would occasionally be, and I am not, I do not have a massive following, and I don't get paid for my posts or anything along those lines. But I would occasionally notice I would say something and then it would get like embedded in a newspaper article. And then I would just think like, oh shit, that's right. They can do that, which leads to, just some interesting ways that I started thinking about that now. Like, is this, how do you strike that balance between being authentic and recognizing that, that what you say actually does potentially wind up in much, much broader spaces, and how do you think about how to do that ethically?
Today, we've heard valuable perspectives on the complex issue of cybersecurity and its intersection with AI, information integrity, and education. Key takeaways related to influence include the understanding that AI is a tool we must learn to wield responsibly, the urgent need for critical thinking and education to navigate the complexities of online information and counter disinformation, and the shared responsibility from individuals to tech companies to governments in building a more secure digital future. Remember the importance of staying informed, demanding accountability, and recognizing our own agency in this evolving technological revolution. Thank you for joining us for this special episode of Chief Influencer. Chief Influencer is a production of Social Driver. We help clients transform complexity into clarity with people-centered strategies. Whether you're looking to elevate the influence of your brand or your leaders, check out socialdriver.com to learn more. For show notes or to nominate a guest, visit us at chiefinfluencer.org or follow Chief Influencer on LinkedIn.